Sorry, did she give me a thumb? I wasn't looking. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 17th meeting of the Technical Transportation Committee. So I'm calling the meeting to order. First item of business that we want to take up before moving on to the approval of minutes is introduction of a new representative on the committee. We'll give the floor to Brian.
Hello all. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Brian Walk as a proxy vote for me for City Bus. Brian Walk is our newly promoted manager of customer experience at City Bus. Came over from being the manager of operations and a 18-year employee. Yeah, 18-year employee of City Bus, and will be attending these meetings regularly. So I would make a motion that we would appoint him as a proxy for City Bus for me.
That was a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Unanimous vote.
Thank you all.
This is approved. Thank you. All right. The next item then is the approval of minutes from the April 19th meeting. I will entertain a motion.
So move.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Any corrections to be brought to light? Okay. So we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Any abstain? Okay. The minutes from the April 19th meeting have been approved. Okay, so the next item we have on the docket here is access permits.
That would be me. So as far as INDOT goes, this I think is in the packet. If not, it's certainly available. And I think we have talked about all of these in the past, even though the top three there says permit applications, but one of them is yours, Sue, with 52 and 450, and I know we've talked about that one. And we've mentioned, I think, the 5228 location. And FYI, a traffic signal is going in there. There's been a temporary signal there on and off at US 52 and 28, the south junction, or whichever one you want to call that. And we're making that permanent. So that's, and it wasn't because of this permit, but it's just that same location. And the other item is Gothra Family Companies on 38, just west of Creasy, and we've talked about that before too. So there's nothing new here. And if anybody has any questions, I will try to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, there appear to be none, so we'll move on. So we need to amend the FY 22 through 26 tip. And so we have a number of items here. Doug, you're on.
Good afternoon. We have two tip amendments to present to this body. The first one is a request by the Wabash Center, and they applied for special Federal Transit Administration funds, Section 5310 funds, to purchase two vehicles, and INDOT recently approved that request. Of course, the total cost for those two vehicles is almost $250,000, and 80% of that cost will be paid for with these special federal funds. The APC staff is recommending approval for the policy board. Questions or comments? Fairly straightforward.
I would move approval.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. There appears to be no questions, further discussion, so I'll proceed with the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous.
Great.
You have approval.
Thank you. The second TIP amendment is in regard to City Bus. If you look through the staff report, it is fairly extensive. Basically, there are 6 parts to this. In terms of looking at the first 2, looking back into fiscal year 2019 and 2020, there are a balance of federal Section 5307 funds. Of course, if the 2019 funds are not obligated by the end of this federal fiscal year, which is the end of September, City Bus will lose those. So they would like to use these funds, so they are programming them in various projects, as you can see in the staff report. And they include basically bus replacement, paratransit bus replacement, facility rehabilitation, and you can see the individual amounts for those projects, both in fiscal year 2019 funds and then also 2020 funds. Furthermore, back in fiscal year 2020, the City Bus also did a trade with the MACOG MPO, which you're kind of scratching your head going, why would they trade funds with the MACOG MPO? In that MPO actually runs the transit system for South Bend. So they receive special 5307 funds to operate that system. Their system is not as robust as City Bus's system, and generally every year they do not use all of their federal funds. Thus, these trades happen from time to time. And it's great for both parties in that City Bus trades local funds for approximately 2% or 2 times the amount in federal funds, because they have enough to actually levy or leverage those federal funds. Unfortunately, at the time when this trade occurred, it was not programmed in the TIP, so this is basically bookkeeping in that we're actually programming this. And as you can see, it'll be going to 2 projects, bus rebuild components, and then also security cameras. They are also programming a special federal funds. This is called Section 5339 funds, and these are used for basically 2 things. One, for major capital replacements such as City Bus, or not City Bus, but transit buses, and then also for facilities, especially new ones. They received $1.2 million in federal funds, and these funds will be used to replace 2 full-size buses. Going on, they have looked at their 2022 and 2023 Section 5307 capital project lists and have decided to make some changes with pretty much almost all of those. And the staff report specifically spells out, for example, there are some projects such as rebuilding bus engines and bus transmissions that will drop to 0. But there will be increases in pretty much all the other projects. For example, bus replacement, support vehicles, capital preventive maintenance, and so forth. For 2023, it's slightly different. They needed more money for capital projects, so they are going to use only local funds for operating assistance and moving all of those federal funds into capital projects. You see here on the very last page, there's a summary of the 2023, and the big number that really jumps up, one is bus replacement, and then also capital preventive maintenance. There is a new project in this that I would like to point out, and that is basically starting a new van pool program, which is very exciting. That basically summarized the staff report. I mean, there's 6 or 7 pages for it. It's a very extensive one. I hope you've had a chance to read all the details. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Okay, there appear to be no questions, so motion from you or on the floor?
So if I can, in my own self-interest, make a motion that we approve the tip amendment. I do just have a comment. I don't know if you want me to wait for a second.
Well, let's get a second, yeah.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. With the van pool program, the RFP is out on the street, so if you or your friends know anybody who is operating a van pool program nationwide, please feel free to direct them to our procurement page. Anticipate it taking approximately a month or so to get submissions and select, and then giving them about a 3-month startup period, but looking forward to having van pools hopefully by the fall. So, and the rest of this is really kind of cleanup, trying to bring our federal dollars in line and get them moving through so that we have a squeaky clean record with INDOT and with FTA in terms of, if you give us money, we will spend it. So, thank you.
Just quick explanation. I mean, I read the thing, but I still don't understand what a van pool is.
Van pool is, the easiest way to describe it is to describe what we did in Ann Arbor. We contracted with Enterprise Rent-A-Van in Ann Arbor. There are relatively few national providers of a van pool, but Enterprise is one of them. In Ann Arbor, we contracted with them. There's a specific piece of federal law that allows them to use their investment in their fleet as the local match. And so we use just federal dollars from a local perspective. We're using just federal dollars. Enterprise then supplies the van or vans. And in Ann Arbor, at our peak, we had 118 separate van pools that were running. And they can be employer-sponsored, where we had University of Michigan Health System sponsored van pools, and people who lived in generally the same area would all match up with a van pool, and you could have anywhere between 4 and 14 people all sharing in a van. And Enterprise supplies the van. It's a late model. It's got to be 3 years or newer or something like that. You select a driver and an alternate driver. The driver typically gets some sort of either discount on their monthly fee for the use of the vehicle or some other kind of perk. They're very specifically not an employee of either City Bus or of Enterprise. In terms of driving the vehicle, they're a volunteer driver, and then they drive the vehicle. Another benefit is that they then take the vehicle home. They're the last person on the pool, and can drive that vehicle typically up to 200 miles outside of the van pool activities, but then they're responsible for getting the oil changed and keeping, upkeep and all of that. Enterprise handles the logistics of, hey, your vehicle's ready for an oil change, take it to this location, get the oil changed. Participants can pay anywhere from the portion of the program fee that is not subsidized by City Bus, all the way down to just the fuel, and they split the fuel amongst everybody who's riding in the van pool. The program fee, as an example, in Ann Arbor was about $1,300. Ann Arbor paid, the transit paid for a little over half of that, and then the participants would need to cough up the other like $600. And again, in Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan Health System looked at it and said, you know what, for $600 a month, I don't have to build a $35,000 parking space in a parking deck somewhere. I'll pay it. And so the employer paid it because it was worth it to them. Here, we're open to really any kind of combination of participant pay, employer pay, third-party human service pays. If there's somebody, where they're helping somebody who's with low income get, they don't have a job currently and they're going to get a job, and so that it operates on a time-based, you can ride for the cost of fuel for a year instead of having to pay the program fee, but then over time you pay more of the program fee. There's about as many ways as you can think of as to divide up how to pay the roughly $600 per vehicle that the pool members are ultimately responsible for. Here in Lafayette, without having a specific vendor in mind, because it's open for bid, we've talked with Wabash, talked with Tactile Engineering, IU Health, a number of other employers, and they're have varying degrees of interest. Primarily, they want to know what level of work their employees have to do to get it done. I would say at some point, if you're struggling to get employees and one company offers subsidized van pools and one doesn't, the one that's offering the subsidy, should, I would imagine, be more attractive. And so hope to create a little bit of a competition. Estimates are that we could support around 39 van pools based on the census data. As I understand it, we were shorted a bit there in the census data, so my hope is that over the next 2 years we would get more than 39 van pools. But the benefit for the transit, one, is that this is why we exist. I mean, we're not here just to run buses up and down the street. We're here to provide mobility. And the second is that we get to count all of the passenger trips and miles towards our 5307 allocation that gets allocated across the nation. So we have some vested interest in doing it, but I'm really excited about the idea of providing additional mobility. This was the Tactile Engineering, as an example. They have employees that are visually impaired that need to get to work, and they have employees that are monetarily impaired that don't have a reliable car, but come to work every day as long as their car works. And so from their perspective, like, this is ideal, because the visually impaired person would more than happily pay, some portion of a program fee a month to get a guaranteed ride to work. So that, I'm sorry, I don't ever have a short answer, but that's the long answer to what a van pool is. Yeah.
Was that in the county?
Well, that's an interesting question. So state law just recently changed, thanks to work by Greater Lafayette Commerce and us. As if there's an agreement between the counties, an intergovernmental agreement, then the van pool can cross into whatever county we have an agreement with. Prior to that change in state law, we were strictly limited to the county borders. We don't currently have any county agreements in place, but I can't imagine anybody saying, no, don't bring mobility to my county, I don't want it. So I don't know if it may or may not be easy, but Greater Lafayette Commerce had a vested interest in it because they have a 6-county area, and from their perspective, the labor shed where people travel from does include, lots of right. Mm-hmm. So we are open to it, but at the moment we're Tippecanoe County.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm pumped, if you can't tell. I'm excited.
Very good. Any further questions? Okay. All right. So we proceed with the vote, right?
Yep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
Thank you all.
So the next item on the agenda is the APC progress report, beginning with the MPO update. Doug?
As you know, we've been, for the last several months, going through the process and developing a new transportation improvement program. Of course, NDOT has their own version, what they call the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, and that draft document has been completed and is up and available for public review and comment. In addition to that, one item that we always have, they also have to have, is that they also have public meetings, open houses, and that process actually starts today. Today they are having a public open house at the Marion Public Library in Marion, Indiana, one right now and then one in the evening. Tomorrow they actually have a meeting or open house at the Broad Ripple Park Family Center in Indianapolis. And then next week on Wednesday, they will have it in Maryville, Indiana. And then the following week, the 31st, they have one in Evansville. Now, for those of us like us in Lafayette, they do have a virtual public open house on Thursday, June 1st. And the first one is from 1 to 3 and then from 5 to 7. So again, they're going through their public participation process just like we do. Of course, they're several months behind. Their goal is to have the STIP submitted to Federal Highway by July 1st. So that's moving forward. But we thought this information would be of interest. We plan on at least attending the Thursday, June 1st online meetings and see what is being presented. And then I don't know at this point if we're making any comments or not, but at least listening in on that. Questions, comments? Okay, I'll go on to the next item, the U.S. bike routes, specifically USBR 37. We're actually making progress with this in terms of getting the route designated. INDOT Central Office did submit the application to AASHTO last month, and shortly thereafter, last part of April, early part of May, INDOT did have a 10-day, basically, comment period open for people to submit letters, whether it be support or against the U.S. bike route. That time window has closed, and at this time, those comments are actually being reviewed. What is left to be done on INDOT's part is then, after reviewing those comments, having the commissioner then actually approving it if they decide to move forward with it, and then actually submitting the application. Kind of sounds interesting that they haven't, but they are allowed to do that. So the next question is, when does AASHTO actually meet and make this decision or determination? That is actually happening this week. Even though INDOT is not completed with their part, if AASHTO does move forward and this week decide that, yes, this is an acceptable U.S. bike route, they can make a conditional approval, which I'm hoping they do. And then if INDOT does, the commissioner does sign off on it and submits that paperwork, then what we have to do is then wait for the time that AASHTO publishes the minutes. And once that is done, and if everything is aligned, approved, it will become a U.S. official bike route. So we're getting very close to the end, and I hope this time next month we will have a clear answer whether it was approved or was not. So just a quick update on what's going on with that. And just another brief mention on U.S. bike routes or bicycling. This coming Friday morning is Bike to Work Day. There is a little celebration on the pedestrian bridge beginning at 8 o'clock where a proclamation will be read. And in addition to that, there'll be coffee and goodies to snack on, and I believe also some gift cards that will be given out. So please feel free if you'd like to go to the event. You're more welcome. So just kind of a brief introduction about that. Tim, were you going to do the railroad grant? Okay.
Okay, so that does lead us into our next item, which is this railroad grant. So kind of to frame this, during the most recent transportation legislation, as many on this committee are very familiar with, they've kind of philosophically went to a lot of grant-based funding. And one of those types of funding is specifically for passenger rail. And so back in January, we attended a presentation with someone from Amtrak that came down and kind of presented to us, some of what they would like to see. And that kind of started a local effort to really look at kind of renewing some of the passenger rail service that runs through Lafayette. Again, as many of you know, we used to have the Hoosier State line run through here, and unfortunately in 2019 we did lose that service, meaning that currently the only service we have running through here that's passenger rail really is the Cardinal line, which only runs a couple days a week. So unfortunately, it really isn't very conducive to providing good service and really getting good ridership on there that you would like to see. So to kind of work on that, several different groups from around the state and also even into some of the neighboring states kind of got together and put in several different applications for potential future work along this corridor. So kind of the what we focused on is getting a corridor from Louisville up to Chicago running through here, and really being able to improve that corridor and to make it sufficient so that we can have multiple trips per day, which is what studies indicate would probably be really needed to make this a much more feasible passenger rail route. So our part of that specifically was to request funding for two projects, one of which is some improvements to the Lafayette Yard here in Tippecanoe County, and the other one is a curve correction in Monon, which would allow the trains to go through that curve at a much faster speed than it currently is able to. So we did file that application late last month. It will be a few months before we hear back about it, but we are optimistic that we have a decent chance of getting some of this funding, and hopefully this will kind of be some of the pieces that lay the groundwork to eventually getting this more frequent service that really will provide a good amenity and be a benefit, not only to citizens in the community, but also Purdue University students who may want to travel to the airports in Indianapolis and Chicago, or perhaps people who want to live here but maybe commute to one of those larger areas for work or something along those lines. So we will keep you updated on that as we hear more information, but for now, the application has been filed. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Doug, back to you on the federal funding obligation.
In your packet is a spreadsheet showing the obligation status of all our FY23 federal funds. And if you look at it, it's quite detailed. In other words, we basically, all of the federal funds we anticipated to obligate have been obligated. You can see how much by project. There's one thing I would like to point out, which we will actually be discussing here in a pinch, is that there's an additional line on the allocation in the second part, and that is an additional 2023 federal funds of $141,243. When we were putting the TIP together, we were given basically draft funding amounts. At that time, they didn't have a final figure. Recently, NDOT went through the funding obligations and actually discovered that they did receive more federal funds than what they were anticipating, so they did give us a pinch of additional federal funds. So here in a little bit, we will be discussing where to allocate those funds, because the caveat to this is that they have to be obligated by the end of September. So this coming September. So basically that's a status report. All of the federal funds that we anticipated to be obligated have been obligated. So I'll go ahead and jump to the 18-month letting list. Again, the list is in your packet. I'll just briefly go over a couple things. The two projects that were on the April letting, which you can see on the second page. The first project, US 52 auxiliary lanes, there were no bids under the engineer's estimate, and it states, of course, it may be re-advertised for a future letting. For the scour protection project, there were 3 bids, and that project was awarded for a little over $300,000. Going back to the first page, there were 3 projects on the May letting. The first on State Road 28. And this is kind of interesting when I looked at this morning. No one submitted a bid to actually do this project. I've rarely seen that. So I hope that is then put on either not June, but maybe July or August bid letting. For project number 4, there were 2 bids. The low bid was to Michiana Contracting for $4.3 million. And then for the traffic signal modernization, there was only 1 bid for a little over $2.4 million. So we'll have additional information next month on those 3 projects. Going to project 9, of course you see Morehouse Road Phase 1 is on the November 15th bid letting later this year. Project 14 and 15, they actually moved. Basically, those are thin deck overlay projects. And then projects 16 and 17 are 2 county road bridge projects, 64 and 65, and they're on a July of 2024 bid letting. So just quickly going through that, those are some of the highlights. Questions or comments?
Okay. There appear to be no questions, so next item we'll move on to is the new 2023 federal funds. Doug?
Hey, this is where we need your help in terms of what do we do with these extra funds? I mean, I have an idea where I think they should go, but, you know, we're going to have this committee make the suggestion of where to allocate these funds and then actually process it through a TIP amendment eventually to the policy board so these funds can actually be obligated. So we could actually consider this as a TIP amendment if you would like, and you could make the decision and then not tomorrow, but then in June actually present it to the administrative committee if we're all in agreement as to which project these funds should be allocated to. When we looked in the TIP, basically we figured that there's 4 possibilities. The first one would be Yeager Road, which just went for construction. 2 would be the right-of-way phase for Morehouse. 3, South 9th Street, the right-of-way or engineering phase. And 4 for the engineering phase for Soldiers Home Road. So typically in the TIP, our federal funds are allocated first to construction phase and then right-of-way and then to engineering. But we did not want to make a suggestion or recommendation. We wanted the committee to actually do that. So now I'm like to open the floor for your comments, recommendations, suggestions.
Of those 4, I know that Yeager is underfunded. I don't know about the other 3. Anybody know? I mean, are they on track? Are they?
So in Doug's staff report, he has percentages listed for how much federal funding share is for each project, and out of those, Yeager is the lowest.
So if I did get those numbers wrong, you know,
Okay,
please
it.
correct me.
One's fully at 80, 76 and 73.
But of those 4, Yeager Road is also under construction.
Mm-hmm.
So it has the lowest federal share. It's also in construction. That, to me, makes sense that it would go to Yeager Road.
I think Russ thought that was good.
Yes.
Since they got a dog in that.
Okay. So, summarize this. The recommendation would be to allocate this balance of funds to the Yeager Road construction phase. Is that correct? Thank you. Would it be possible to have a motion so then we could process this at the June Policy Board to make this official.
So moved. Second.
Thank you for the motion. Is there any further discussion or comment? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, next we have quarterly reports. Tim?
Okay, so jumping in with the county's quarterly reports. So the first one here is for Lindbergh Road. So we do believe that this project has been closed out. This is kind of just our final bookkeeping that we always do, where we double check. So I see Stu is nodding that this has been closed out and we won't be seeing any future reports.
Right. Correct.
All right, very good, thank you. Always nice to see something come to completion. So then our next one is the North 9th Street Road Bridge. So Stu's notes on that mentioned that he has updated the environmental dates to account for some additional environmental and design activities due to an archaeological site that was discovered along that project. So that's why you see that some of those dates have moved back. Do you have anything to add to that, Stu?
No, we're trying to work around the dead Indians or whatever they are.
Okay. So then moving on to our next project, the River Road at 500 North project. So we did note just a very small cost increase on this project. Have the POs been closed out? How close is this one to being done?
There's still one open change order. I think we've written our check, but it's not showing up here yet. We have a punch list going. I apologize, I made some notes and left them of what those things were, but
Oh, that's fine. I think that just the really important thing is that it is moving, which you've confirmed, and that's, I think, good enough for the purposes of this committee. Okay, so then our next project is Morehouse Phase 1. So we did just want to note on this that it does show a right-of-way clear date in this report that we get. However, the right-of-way really is all in Phase 2 of this project. So just as a heads up as to why that showing is incomplete on there, that's the reason. So anything else you want to add to this, Stu?
just like you said, all of the PE right away is all in the Phase 2 project, so this is kind of construction only.
So bringing us to the aforementioned Phase 2 project, we, again, don't have too many comments on this. There was a small change in costs that we noted there. Although really, I should say, it was change in how much federal funding was awarded, not the costs per se. So we didn't have any additional comments other than that, and then the same comment about just the fact that, right-of-way is in this phase. So we'll continue to monitor this from our end. Do you want to add anything to this one, Stu?
We are clear right away. We have 4 parcels in condemnation.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then our next project for the county is the Yeager Road Reconstruction Project. So this, of course, was the one that we just talked about, adding some funding to, which that, of course, is not reflected in this report since this had been filed a couple months ago. But we will be seeing that on our next report, I would imagine. So this project, of course, was let, which was a big relief because we'd had to re-advertise it, of course. So we're glad that we were able to let that. Do you have anything else you wanted to add on this one, Stu?
We've had the pre-construction, and we're moving ahead. We're still on a November completion. That did not change with this shift.
All All right, so then our next project would be the McCutcheon Pedestrian Safety Project. So we just wanted to know if there is an official construction start date for this project yet?
It's June, right after school is out. I'm not sure the date in June.
So June of this year.
There was an early release for utility work.
Gotcha. Okay, good, thank you. So then our next project is Bridge 64. So for this project, Stu gave us some notes that the environmental was delayed due to some changes in hydrology and bridge structure geometrics. But that was on the partner project for this Bridge 65. Since those two go together, that's what caused the delays in this project. Do you have anything further you wanted to add to this, Stu?
Today, we just submitted there, in our last quarterly review with NDOT, we talked about the fact that we're only 34% funded for the pair and $5 million out of pocket on the letting for that. And the option that was offered was to move to 2028. We would lose our theoretical 100% bridge funding. That wasn't really, that's a money game. But we would be fully funded at 80, and that would knock us from $5 million down to a $2 million local share. And so we officially requested that switch to a July 27 letting for 2028.
So we should be seeing that in future reports. Okay.
They will accept
All right.
it, and before the next report comes out, it should come off the 18-month list for sure and start showing up in the reports.
And then, of course, that's going to be the same for the next project, Bridge 65. Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think we have to go over that then if that's just the same comment. So we can skip on to the next project after 65, which is another bridge project, 527. So we know that at previous meetings, we kind of discussed that this project had been at risk, and you had made some adjustments which have been reflected in this quarterly report. Are there any new updates since this report's been filed?
We're moving ahead. It was just too tight for the letting, so we moved the year. The NOI just went to the paper today. We're well on track. Buying that year gave us pretty good safety margin on our dates. Hopefully we'll be environmental clear and acquiring right away yet this fall.
All right, very good, thank you. So then continuing our theme of bridge projects, our next one is bridge number 80. So this is, again, part of another bundle of projects with the next project, Bridge 83. So when this report was filed, there was a STIP amendment that was in the pipeline. Since this report has been filed, that was finally approved. So we're glad to report that that should positively impact both Bridge 80 and 83.
Did. EMIS went in, POs were issued, and notice to proceed has been given to the consultant on both projects. They're very happy.
Okay, so that covers 80 and 83. So then the next, or the last county project is the county bridge inspections. So these are, something that's always going on. So we didn't have any direct comments on these. Did you have anything you wanted to add about this, Stu?
We're phase one complete, moving ahead.
All right, so that should go ahead and move us on to Lafayette. So for the Park East Boulevard, the POs have been closed, and so at our last cycle, we got the final quarterly report. So again, just to confirm that, we're not going to be getting any future quarterly reports for that.
Yep, that's correct. So that leaves us only one project.
Right. So then that does take us to Lafayette's active project, which of course is South 9th Street. So they've continued to work on the environmental document. So the first public information meeting at the time we got this report, it was scheduled for the 15th. Did that meeting happen?
That happened.
Okay,
we
good.
had a turnout of 55 plus people. It was well attended. We had good feedback and comments, and it went well.
All right, hey, we like to hear that. Do you have anything else you want to add about this project, Jeremy?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so moving on to West Lafayette. So, of course, we know that there have been some staffing changes. So this is kind of really a general question for all of the West Lafayette projects. Have you guys been able to assign a new ERC to these projects?
Chris has got that done.
Okay, good. So moving on to our next project. So this is one of the kind of break-off pieces of the Soldiers Home Road project. So our note on this was just that since this is one of the newer ones that we've been getting reports for, we'll continue to monitor this. I didn't have any other direct comments on this. Ben, do you want to add anything for this project?
Nope. I mean, we had a public meeting last month. And for input session, went well for the most part. And I mean, design's tracking along, so we got nothing new to really report.
All right, and then our last project for West Lafayette, the Sagamore Parkway Trail project, which I've actually driven by myself several times, and looks like they're going pretty well on that one. So any comments you wanted to add on that, Ben?
Nope. It's it's supposed to be done, like I think in September, and we have some traffic shifts. They're starting to work there farther to the west and transporting all the dirt that's near the bridge there that needs to get transported down to the southern piece and cutting that around. But they've got a couple of the walls built down in the what you can't see unless you walk down through there. So I think the public will start to see a little bit more stuff going on that's more visible just because it's not buried down below, but things are progressing there. Got some good weather ahead, so we should be able to put a big dent in it next couple of weeks.
Okay, so that will conclude all of the quarterly project tracking reports unless someone has some comments on something that we missed. All right, well, hearing none, then I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Philip.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right, so we've come to the point in the meeting where we will entertain other business items that anyone has to bring to our attention. Citizen comments also, the floor is open for, if there are any. Appearing to be none, I will next entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. See you next month.